Hey guys, so I'm trying something new with this video thing. I've had a few people tell me that I should try to make videos of myself doing soap. A lot of you have thought about making soap yourself but aren't sure where to start. Some of you are just curious what the process looks like. I know myself as a consumer, it's always really cool to see how my products are made and where they come from, so I thought I would give it a shot. I tried to record myself today making my cocoa butter cashmere bars, but I have the attention span of a squirrel, so I didn't end up making sense. I was talking about things that really weren't even soap. So what I decided to do was write all my thoughts down on paper and then do a voiceover for this video. So that's what I'm doing. If you are interested in that, go ahead and keep watching and you might learn something. I'm not promising that, but maybe it'll just be entertaining. Okay, so what we need to do first is talk about what is in my bucket. I've already melted down my combination of oils and butters, which, by the way, I buy all of them in bulk online. It is a little bit more expensive up front to buy in bulk, but in the long run, it makes the most sense. So today the oils I'm using are canola oil and coconut oil. I've also used rice bran oil, olive oil, and sunflower oil, which are really great as well. So here you can see what the butters look like before I melted them down. This is the shea butter here on the left, and this khaki color is the mango butter on the right. They're both refined. The cool thing about soap making is you can really swap out and customize all of your oils and butters to use whatever you like. It's really cool. So the next thing you're going to see me add is my lye water solution. And guys, before I go any further, please do not try to do anything with lye unless you've studied lye safety. Lye is caustic, which, if you don't know what that means, it will dissolve and burn any organic matter that it touches, and your skin is organic matter, so you really want to make sure you know how to handle it. If you do know how to handle lye properly, it's totally safe, so just make sure that you watch the videos. I'll link them in the description for you guys. Just watch those before you try to work with it, okay? So you might be wondering, if lye, is terrible for your skin, why do we put it in soap? And that's a great question. So the lye chemically reacts with the oils and butters. It's a process called saponification. Once the saponification is complete, the lye and oil molecules actually combine and they change into glycerin and soap. So if your soap is made properly, the lye as it is before is pretty much non-existent. So it's kind of a cool science fact for you. So you see how I am pouring the lye water down the neck of my blender? That's just to avoid splashing. You can also pour it down the side of the bucket. However you do it, guys, just do it carefully, okay? All right, so I'm using an immersion blender or a stick blender to combine my lye and oils. This just makes it easier to bring them to trace, but I will talk about trace in a second because I'm not sure anybody knows what that is. Okay, so there are different stages in the soap blending. There is emulsification, and do you see how there's the little swirls of oil on the surface of the soap? When it's completely emulsified, you're not going to see any of those oil trails. It's going to look like one fluid batter, kind of like this right here. When I stir it, there aren't really any oil swirls on top. That's what we would call emulsification. Now I'm going to speed this part up because we're going to whip it to a light to medium trace. That's where I try to keep all of my soaps when I'm getting ready to work with them. So the trace is just referring to the thickness of the batter. So you see how the droplets are kind of denting the surface, but they immediately fill in. That is how I judge what a thin trace looks like. So after I've got my batter to the thickness that I want, I'm going to add the colorant. Today I'm using mica pigments. They're actually my favorite to use. So I'm starting with a teaspoon. Usually I would add a lot more for a batch this size, but the fragrance oil that I'm using today discolors to dark brown, so I don't need too much help getting the soap to the color that I want. Another colorant that I like to use is titanium dioxide. That's just a white pigment, also from Nurture Soap. I add it to all of my soap batter bases just because it gives it a more opaque finish once it's done. You don't have to by any means. I just like how it looks You do have to dilute your titanium dioxide with water, or else you're going to end up with white specks all through your soap, and I have learned that one the hard way. So now we're going to blend. So by the time I'm finished blending this soap, it's going to be in a medium trace. You can kind of see that there where the batter is sort of standing up on the surface. So the next thing I'm going to do is measure out my fragrance oil, and the one I'm using today is called Cocoa Butter Cashmere from Brambleberry, and as you can see from the label, it is well loved. This particular fragrance oil does have a high concentration of vanillin, so that means that it's going to discolor, which I mentioned earlier. That's what makes it discolor the soap to a dark brown. Honestly, I really don't mind. I let it do what it wants to do in this soap because the dark brown looks so pretty with the gold mica accents that I use. So you can see how the soap is like an ashy gray brown right now. By the time the fragrance oil is done doing its thing, it's going to be a nice dark brown. This fragrance oil also accelerates, which means it's going to make this soap batter reach that thick trace right there real quick. So it kind of looks like pudding when it's at thick trace. So I'm going to pour this batter into my 36 bar mold, and I'm going to throw in a nice slow-mo for you guys because, oh my gosh, pouring soap is so satisfying. Although this is brown, and now that I'm looking at it slowly in slow motion, ew, so never mind. This is the first time that I am using the 36 bar mold. I'm not really sure how it's going to go. Fingers crossed it turns out correctly. So what I'm doing right now is pouring the first layer of my soap. I'm tapping it on the counter to release any air bubbles that might be in there. I'm going to dust the surface with gold mica. This one is also from Nurture Soap. I really like them, if you guys cannot tell. So I'm going to sift the mica pigments through a small tea strainer that I got from TJ Maxx. So what this is going to do when you cut the individual bars, it's going to have a mica line or a mica vein, people sometimes call it, running through the bar of soap. So you want to make sure that you cover the surface thoroughly, but you also don't want to be too heavy-handed because it can cause problems with the second layer sticking to the bottom layer. So you could essentially end up with your bar of soap in two pieces. That hasn't happened to me yet, but I have seen it in some of the soap groups I'm in, so I know it's pretty unfortunate when it does happen. So when we're adding the second layer, I'm gonna do it, I'm not gonna pour it, I'm gonna scoop it individually by hand for two reasons. The main reason is because we don't want to puncture the mica line. We want it to stay as straight as possible. And if we pour it from up high, the batter could break through and just ruin the line altogether. The second reason is, holy moly, look how thick it is right now. That would be a nightmare. It would just be falling and sloshing around everywhere. So it just makes more sense to scoop it by hand. I'm going to skip that part because it's kind of boring. So now that I've got the whole mica layer covered, it's a little bit easier. I can just kind of scrape the soap into the mold. And I am clearly making a mess. But I'm going to get all of that into the mold, and then I'm going to smooth it out and tap it back down on the counter just to get rid of the air bubbles again. If you guys look, you can kind of see a few of the air bubbles coming up to the surface, and I think some of them even pop. The reason I do that is just because when you're cutting your bar of soap, it really doesn't look that great to have little pockets of air all through it. I'm doing a textured top today, so that's why I didn't make it completely smooth. I'm going to use my paper straw because we love sea turtles. Save the turts. This is a design. Sorry, I cracked myself up. This is one of my favorite designs for the top of this soap, and I'm just going to repeat what I did in between the first and second layer, and I'm going to do that all over the top. I tend to be a little bit heavy-handed. You could do it nice and delicately like I'm doing right here, but that's really not how I ever do it. Usually my soap tops end up looking more like this. So I'm going to do it close up and let you guys see how beautiful that is. It's going to look so nice when the dark brown color change happens. I love how it looks with the gold. So now what I'm going to do is cover the soap and let it sit for 18 to 24 hours, and then we'll uncover it, split it into 3 separate loaves, and cut the bars. And we are back 24 hours later. You can kind of see around the edges of the soap how much darker the color has gotten. That's kind of what I was talking about with the fragrance oil discoloration. It's really no joke. So I went ahead and split the whole batch into 3 equal loaves, and now I'm just going through and cutting the bars. I've already scored the top, so I know exactly how big to cut each bar. The next thing I'm going to purchase is a soap cutter because I get way too nervous cutting these by hand. I'm always afraid I'm going to mess them up. Okay, so I'm freezing the shot right here because I need to explain what it is you're about to see. I told you guys that this was the first time that I've used a mold that big, and also the first time I've made a batch that big, so I wasn't really sure how this was going to go. You saw that I split the batch into 3 separate loaves, and I went ahead and cut up all the bars, and then I realized, oh my gosh, these are not the same size that my usual cocoa butter cashmere bars are. All of my bars weigh between 4 and 4.5 ounces, so I was really concerned that these were going to be smaller than that, and I didn't feel right about, selling them for the same price and things like that if they weren't the appropriate weight. So what you're about to see is me obsessing over details and weighing them over and over and over. So I'm just going to let that part play so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay guys, this is me obsessing over details. If you have purchased a cocoa butter cashmere bar from me before, or any bar up until this point, actually, it would have been shaped like this. I love the way the rectangle bars look. They're my favorite, but I wanted to try just to switch things up to use some square molds too. Because I made a bigger batch of this today, the only large batch mold I have makes the little square bars. And I just cut up 36 of the cocoa butter cashmere bars, and I'm looking at them like there is no way these weigh the same. So I'm just gonna look and see. So this bar, okay, this weighs 4.3 ounces. The coconut lime verbena weighs exactly 4 ounces. Okay, and let me just grab one of these. 4 ounces exactly. Really? Wow. Well, that is a relief. Okay, cool. So I wanted to show you guys a little example of what I was talking about with the fragrance oil discoloration. So right now it still has that gray brown, kind of like ashy brown color to it. But this little swirl on the side, this is the dark brown. He's okay. I hear my baby talking. This is what it's gonna discolor to. So I kind of wanted to give you guys a close up so you can see. And then also the little gold mica line in the middle. You kidding me? Come on. That's so pretty. Well, I hope that video was entertaining and somewhat educational. It was quite an experience for me because like I said, I've never used a mold that big. I've never done a batch that big before. So I by no means know everything about soap. There are plenty of people who know more than me, but what I have learned so far, I am more than happy to share with you. I would not be doing this right now if Miss Rhonda from Sonlight Soaps hadn't taken the time to teach me how to do it. So if you ever have any questions, or if you ever want to watch, or even if you guys want me to keep making videos so you can see what I'm learning, I'll be happy to do that for you too. So we hope you liked the video, and we will see you all soon.